Peter Pan is not a hero. He is a killer. In J.M. Barrie's original writings, there is a chilling, often overlooked detail about what happens when the lost boys show signs of growing up. Peter thins them out. This is no metaphor. He is the judge, jury, and executioner in his own kingdom. This single, horrifying fact shatters the story we thought we knew. But this truth opens a much deeper mystery. The darkness isn't just inside the boy, it's in the very soil of the island he rules. So we must ask, what is Neverland, really? To understand Peter's terrible secret, we have to look past him. We must excavate the true 1,500-year-old identity of his kingdom. By the end of our journey, you won't just know Peter's name. You'll know what he truly guards. Think back to that feeling, the swell of music as shadows dance on a nursery wall. We know this story in our bones.
This is epic.
We know the thrill of taking flight, soaring out the window on nothing but faith, trust, and a sprinkle of pixie dust. The destination is etched into our collective memory.
Interrupted.
The second star to the right, and straight on till morning. We remember the boisterous Lost Boys, a wild family of forgotten children. We see Peter, with his confident crow and his shadow stitched clumsily to his heels. We even recall Captain Hook, a villain more theatrical than terrifying, with his ticking clock nemesis and his crew of bumbling pirates. This is the Neverland we were given, a fantastical playground for the imagination, a world promising the one thing we all, at some point, desperately wished for, the dream that we could be young forever, that the adventure would never, ever have to end. It's a beautiful, comforting thought. But that story, the one we cherish, is a beautifully painted screen, and behind it lies a much darker stage. The comfort it offers is an illusion. The real story of Neverland has almost nothing to do with the joyful fantasy of eternal youth. The secret isn't about the boy. It's about the island he claims as his own. The true nature of this place is far older, and its rules are far more dangerous than we have ever been told. Neverland isn't a magical sanctuary where children are kept safe from the passage of time. It is something else entirely. It's a place built on an ancient, terrifying blueprint. A place from which you could never truly escape, because leaving meant facing a fate far worse than just growing up. To uncover the truth of Neverland, our first dig doesn't take us to a mythical island. It takes us to a small town in Scotland, and into the heart of a childhood shattered by tragedy. We have to go back to the source. We have to understand the mind of the man who created it all, James Matthew Barrie. Before he was a celebrated author, he was just a little boy, one of 10 children. But his life was irrevocably fractured on the day before his brother David's 14th birthday. David, his mother's undeniable favorite, was killed in a tragic ice skating accident. The loss was absolute. It hollowed out their family, but it utterly destroyed his mother, Margaret. She took to her bed, consumed by a grief so profound it blotted out the world, even the living son who was still there. Young James, only 6 years old, tried desperately to reach her, to fill the unbearable void his brother had left behind. In a heartbreaking attempt to conjure his brother's ghost, he would even enter her darkened room wearing David's clothes, whistling in the way David used to. And it was in that darkness that his mother spoke the words that would form the cursed heart of the Peter Pan myth. She found a sliver of comfort in one single haunting idea, that David, by dying so young, would be a boy forever. He would never grow up. He would never leave her. This thought became a strange, sad sanctuary for her. But for young Barrie, it planted a seed. The idea of the forever boy was not born from a joyful desire for endless play. It was born from trauma. It was a psychological ghost, a defense mechanism against the finality of death. This wasn't a fantasy. It was a scar. The boy who wouldn't grow up wasn't a celebration of life, but a desperate negotiation with loss. This core wound would shape everything Barry ever wrote. It is the secret engine driving the entire narrative, turning a children's story into a profound and sorrowful monument to a dead brother. This personal ghost, the echo of a boy frozen in time, would follow Barry for the rest of his life. Decades later, that same echo would find a new voice. It would be resurrected not in the quiet, grief-stricken rooms of his childhood home, but in the lively paths of London's Kensington Gardens. It was here that Barry, now a successful but lonely writer, met the people who would become his second family, the Llewellyn Davies boys. First, there was George and Jack, and later Peter, Michael, and Nico. He met them while walking his St. Bernard, Porthos. He was a man with a wild imagination and a deep, childlike spirit, and the boys were instantly captivated. He became their Uncle Jim. He didn't just play with them. He wove epic, sprawling tales for them, casting them as the heroes in a world of his own making. Kensington Gardens transformed into their private adventureland, the very first draft of Neverland. The stories grew more elaborate. He invented a feral baby named Peter Pan, who had escaped from his nursery to live with the fairies. This character was a cocktail of all the boys' personalities, but he was especially inspired by the fierce spirit of young Michael. Barry's bond with the family was profound. It was a source of immense joy and creative energy. But just as his childhood was marked by sudden loss, his adulthood would be defined by it too. The darkness crept in again. In 1907, the boy's father, Arthur, died a painful death from cancer. Barry stepped in, becoming a pillar of support for the grieving family and their mother, Sylvia. He was their rock, but fate was not finished with them. Just 3 years later, in 1910, Sylvia also succumbed to cancer, leaving her 5 sons as orphans. In her will, she named Barry as their co-guardian. He was now, in every meaningful way, their father. He was a man who had never had children of his own, now responsible for 5 lost boys. Once again, Barry found himself standing in the wreckage of a family destroyed by death. The parallels are impossible to ignore. A lost brother, lost parents, a life defined by the ghosts of those taken too soon. A lesser man might have collapsed under the weight of such repeated sorrow. Barry, however, did what he had always done when faced with an unbearable reality. He built a world. He doubled down on his storytelling, not just as a game, but as a form of survival. Neverland wasn't just a bedtime story anymore. It became a necessary psychological sanctuary, a place where the brutal rules of life and death could be bent or broken entirely. This is the true genesis of Neverland. It is not an island of fantasy. It is an island of trauma. Think about it. This is a place where children are literally lost. They fall out of their prams when their nurses aren't looking. They are motherless, forgotten, just like the Davies boys were. It is a world presided over by a boy who refuses to face the one thing that has caused Barry so much pain, the process of growing up, which inevitably ends in departure and death. The very landscape of Neverland reflects the chaotic, violent nature of grief. Why is it filled with such constant mortal peril? You have pirates who want to murder children. You have the vicious mermaids in the lagoon, who will drown you if you get too close. You have the Native American tribe, depicted in the troubling stereotypes of the time, engaged in endless, deadly conflict. This isn't a whimsical playground. It is a war zone. This constant looping violence is the external expression of a mind wrestling with internal chaos. It's the way a traumatized mind works, replaying threats, seeing danger around every corner. Even time itself is broken in Neverland. It's fluid and unreliable. You can never quite trust the clocks. This isn't a magical feature, it's a symptom. In the throes of deep grief, our own sense of time shatters. The past feels more real than the present, and the future feels impossible. Neverland is an island frozen in this state because its creator was psychologically frozen by loss. First by the death of his brother, and then by the deaths of his dear friends. It is a place built to keep the ghosts of the people he loved alive, forever young, forever safe from the final tick of the clock. But as we'll soon discover, this psychological map was drawn upon a much, much older blueprint. Barry wasn't just inventing a world. He was unconsciously rediscovering one. The psychological wounds of J.M. Barrie give us the why of Neverland. They explain its emotional core as a fortress against grief. But they do not explain the what. They don't explain the specific rules, the strange inhabitants, or the island's ancient, unsettling architecture. For that, we must dig deeper. We must look past the man and into his ancestry. Barrie was a Scot, born and raised in a culture steeped in folklore, far older and stranger than any Victorian nursery tale. He was swimming in these stories from birth. This is our first real clue. It suggests that Barrie didn't just invent Neverland out of thin air.
Can't see target.
He unconsciously reconstructed it from the mythological bedrock of his own heritage. I believe that Neverland is a modern retelling of a concept central to Celtic mythology, the Otherworld. Specifically, it mirrors the legendary island of Tir na Nog, the land of eternal youth. The parallels are staggering. Tir na Nog was described as an elusive, supernatural island, a paradise existing just beyond the veil of our own world. It was a place where sickness and death did not exist, and its inhabitants remained forever young and beautiful. To get there was a perilous journey. It often required a guide from the other world and a voyage across the Western Sea, or through a magical mist that separated the realms. Does this sound familiar? A mythical island, reachable only by a magical flight, where no one ever gets older. Neverland is a direct echo. This isn't just a simple fantasy trope of a magic land. The specifics are too close to... Barrie was a Scot, born and raised in a culture steeped in folklore, far older and stranger than any Victorian nursery tale. He was swimming in these stories from birth. This is our first real clue. It suggests that Barrie didn't just invent Neverland out of thin air. He unconsciously reconstructed it from the mythological bedrock of his own heritage. I believe that Neverland is a modern retelling of a concept central to Celtic mythology, the Otherworld. Specifically, it mirrors the legendary island of Tir na Nog, the land of eternal youth. The parallels are staggering. Tir na Nog was described as an elusive, supernatural island, a paradise existing just beyond the ancient, unseen any Victorian nursery tale. He was swimming in the legendary island of Tir na Nog. The land of eternal youth. The parallels are staggering. Tir na Nog was described as an elusive, supernatural island, a paradise existing just beyond the veil of our own world. It was a place where sickness and death did not exist, and its inhabitants remained forever young and beautiful. To get there was a perilous journey. It often required a guide from the other world and a voyage across the Western Sea, or through a magical mist that separated the realms. Does this sound familiar? A mythical island, reachable only by a magical flight, where no one ever gets older. Neverland is a direct echo. This isn't just a simple fantasy trope of a magic land. The specifics are too close to be a coincidence. In the oldest Celtic traditions, the Otherworld wasn't just a place of joy. It was a place where time behaved differently. A day there could be a year in the mortal world, or time could stand still altogether. This temporal distortion is a key feature of Neverland, where days and nights are fluid and no one keeps track of the years. The connection is clear. Barrie, drawing from the deep well of his cultural memory, gave his psychological sanctuary an ancient, pre-existing address. So, if we accept Neverland as a modern Tir na Nog, then we must re-examine everyone who lives there. This brings us to our second clue. The inhabitants of this island are not who we think they are. They are archetypes, drawn directly from the darker side of Scottish and Irish.
I have to replace my battery. I dropped it, but it landed right on my lap.
Folklore. Let's start with Tinkerbell. The sweet, sassy pixie from the Disney film is a sanitized version of a much more formidable being. In Barry's original play, she is far more volatile. She is jealous, possessive, and at one point, she tries to have Wendy killed out of pure spite. She is not a cute sidekick. She is a reflection of the Aeschi, the fairy folk of Celtic lore. The Aeschi were not tiny winged sprites. They were powerful supernatural beings, beautiful, but also dangerous, amoral, and fiercely territorial. They operated on a system of ethics completely alien to humans, and to cross them was to invite ruin. Tinkerbell's raw, untamed emotions are not a character flaw. They are a sign of her true nature as one of these primordial entities. And what about the Lost Boys? The story tells us they are children who fell from their prams, but through this Celtic lens, they become something far more sinister. They are a direct echo of changeling myths. For centuries, people in rural Ireland and Scotland believed the Aeschi coveted human children. They would steal healthy babies from their cribs and leave behind a sickly fairy substitute, a changeling, in its place.
I want to hear that
These
again.
stories are as one of these primordial entities. And what about the Lost Boys? The story tells us they are children who fell from their prams, but through this Celtic lens, they...
What is a pram? A four-wheeled carriage for a baby pushed by a person on foot. I know what a pram is now.
become something far more sinister. They are a direct echo of changeling myths. For centuries, people in rural Ireland and Scotland believed the Aeschi coveted human children. They would steal healthy babies from their cribs and leave behind a sickly fairy substitute, a changeling, in its place. These stories were a way to explain childhood illness and death in a pre-scientific age. Now, look at Peter Pan. He finds these lost children and brings them to his otherworldly island to live with him forever. He isn't a savior gathering forgotten souls. He is the Fairy King, the lord of the Aeschi, stealing mortal children and taking them back to his realm. He is the kidnapper from the old tales, and the Lost Boys are his collection of changelings, trapped forever in the timeless land of the fairies. This completely inverts the narrative. Peter Pan is no longer the hero of this story. He is its primordial monster. This revelation that Neverland is the otherworld and Peter is a fairy king is disturbing. But it's here that our investigation uncovers the single most important piece of evidence. This is the pivotal revelation that makes the entire puzzle click into place. Every version of the otherworld myth comes with a terrible price. There is always a rule, a catch. And the story that best explains the hidden rule of Neverland is one of the most famous tales from Irish mythology, the story of Oisin and Niamh of the Golden Hair. Oisin was a great mortal warrior who fell in love with Niamh, a princess of the otherworld. She took him across the sea to Tir na Nog. There he lived in bliss. He never aged, he knew no sorrow, and he was surrounded by beauty and magic. What felt to him like 3 years passed in this paradise. But eventually, a deep homesickness grew in his heart. He longed to see his homeland and his old warrior companions one last time. Niamh pleaded with him not to go, but seeing his sadness, she finally agreed. She gave him her magical white horse, but warned him sternly, under no circumstances was he to let his feet touch the soil of Ireland. If he did, he could never return. Oisin made the journey back, but when he arrived, he found a land he no longer recognized. His grand stone castle was a ruin covered in ivy. The people were small and strange. He learned that 300 years had passed while he was in Tir na Nog. All his friends, his family, everyone he had ever known was long dead. In his despair, as he rode, he saw a group of men struggling to move a large stone. Forgetting the warning in a moment of pity, he leaned down from his saddle to help them. The saddle strap broke. He fell to the ground, and the instant his foot touched the earth, the magic of the other world vanished. The weight of 3 centuries crashed down upon his body. In a moment, the handsome young warrior withered into an ancient, blind old man who died shortly after. This is the secret. This is the terrible price of eternity. The real danger isn't staying in Neverland. It's leaving. Leaving means accepting the brutal reality of time. It means facing mortality. Now think of Captain Hook. Who is he? He is the man who left. Barry tells us Hook was once one of Peter's boys. He grew up. He escaped Neverland. But he paid the price. He is now relentlessly pursued by the embodiment of time itself, the ticking crocodile. The crocodile that ate his hand didn't just maim him, it tasted him. And now it wants the rest. That constant tick-tock that haunts him is not just a sound effect. It is the sound of the mortal clock he is now bound to. It is the sound of O'Sheen's 300 years catching up to him. Hook's obsession with destroying Peter isn't just revenge. It is a desperate, furious rage against the being who represents the timeless state he has lost forever. He is terrified of his own mortality. And Peter is its smiling, youthful, infuriating reminder. This connection to the other world is profound, but our excavation must go one level deeper. The mythology gives us a blueprint, but ancient archaeology gives us a physical location, a specific type of place. This brings us to the core of our thesis. The old Celtic stories didn't just describe the otherworld as a distant island. They believed there were physical gateways to it here, in our world, and these gateways were the ancient burial mounds that dot the landscapes of Ireland and Scotland. They called them She, pronounced She. These mounds, like the famous Newgrange in Ireland, which is older than the pyramids, were far more than tombs. They were seen as literal portals, liminal spaces, thresholds between the world of the living and the world of the gods, between time and eternity. The Aishi, the fairy folk, were originally called the Deen Shi, the people of the mounds. This is where they were believed to live. This is the final, crucial piece of evidence. Neverland is not just an island. It is a She. It is a mythological space for the dead, or for those caught in the threshold between life and what comes next. This reframes the entire story from a fantasy, and Peter is its smiling, youthful, infuriating reminder. This connection to the other world is profound, but our excavation must go one level deeper. The mythology gives us a blueprint, but ancient archaeology gives us a physical location, a specific type of place. This brings us to the core of our thesis. The old Celtic stories didn't just describe the otherworld as a distant island. They believed there were physical gateways to it here, in our world, and these gateways were the ancient burial mounds that dot the landscapes of Ireland and Scotland. They called them She, pronounced She. These mounds, like the famous Newgrange in Ireland, which is older than the pyramids, were far more than tombs. They were seen as literal portals, liminal spaces, thresholds between the world of the living and the world of the gods, between time and eternity. The Aishi, the fairy folk, were originally called the Deen Shi, the people of the mounds. This is where they were believed to live. This is the final, crucial piece of evidence. Neverland is not just an island. It is a She. It is a mythological space for the dead, or for those caught in the threshold between life and what comes next. This reframes the entire story from a fantasy into a ghost story. The flight to Neverland isn't a journey to a magic kingdom. It's the crossing of a metaphysical boundary into a realm of spirits. And this makes Peter Pan something else entirely. He is a psychopath, a conductor of souls, like the Greek god Hermes or the Egyptian god Anubis. He guides the spirits of children, the lost ones, to this halfway house. This realm is built from the psychic energy of Barry's own grief, a place for the ghost of his brother David and the spirits of the Davies parents to reside, forever safe from the decay of the outside world. Recent archaeological discoveries at sites like Newgrange add another layer of primordial darkness. They reveal that these mounds were precisely aligned with the solstices, designed to capture the sun's light on the shortest day of the year, a literal manipulation of time and darkness. Some findings have even suggested incestuous unions among the ruling elite buried within, uncannily mirroring the creation myths of the mounds themselves, where gods create divine offspring through unnatural means. These ancient sites were intrinsically linked to the control of time, the housing of spirits, and primordial godlike power. Neverland fits this
Fizzle.
description perfectly. It is an ancient machine
Interrupted.
for halting time, powered by grief. And so we must look at Peter Pan one last time. We must look at him
Can't
for
see
what
target.
he truly is. He is not a boy playing a game. He is the boy king of this liminal realm. He is the ancient, powerful lord of the She. This recontextualizes all of his strangest and most disturbing traits. His famous inability to remember his own adventures, or even the people he meets, isn't a charming, childish flaw. In fairy lore, memory is a human trait. Fairies are beings of the eternal present, truly is. He is not a boy playing a game. He is the boy king of this liminal realm. He is the ancient, powerful lord of the She. This recontextualizes all of his strangest and most disturbing traits. His famous inability to remember his own adventures, or even the people he meets, isn't a charming, childish flaw. In fairy lore, memory is a human trait. Fairies are beings of the eternal present. They forget because they are not bound by the linear flow of time. His cruelty, his sudden flashes of violence, his profound emotional detachment, these are not the actions of a human child. They are the characteristics of a non-human entity, a being like the Aoshi, for whom human emotions like love and grief are meaningless curiosities. And this brings us back to the most terrifying detail of all. The reason he thins out the lost boys. Why does he kill them when they begin to grow up? Because to grow is to change. To change is to re-engage with time. To grow up is to choose a path, to move on towards life, or to fully accept death. Either choice would violate the fundamental sacred rule of the She. This place is a realm of stasis. It is a prison of memory, built to hold a feeling forever. Growth is forbidden. Peter Pan, the guardian of this realm, is simply enforcing its one unbreakable law. He isn't a murderer in the human sense. He is a warden, preserving the perfect, terrible stillness of his grief-stricken kingdom. We began our journey with a killer of children, and ended at the doorstep of the Celtic otherworld. We have proven that Neverland is no fantasy island. It is a She, a mythological gateway built from the blueprint of a 1,500-year-old belief and mortared with J.M. Barrie's own unbearable grief. The story is no longer about the simple joy of eternal childhood. It is now a haunting exploration of grief's defiant stasis. It serves as a profound warning that to refuse the passage of time is to become a ghost, trapped in a beautiful illusion where the ticking crocodile of mortality will eventually come for us all.
Run, run, as fast as you can. You can't catch me. I'm the gingerbread man. It seems like a harmless childhood story, but it may be remembering something far older.
Alright, we gotta
A
end it.
memory of sacrifice, a whisper from the ancient
And
world
cut.
when bread was sacred.